for me as an audio programmer, when I'm working with technical sound designers and sound designers, soon as the sound designer is getting further and further away from the creative side of sound design, and I know that technical sound designers design systems, they help with implementation. There's lots of complicated and technical things that you do, which can sometimes rival that of some junior audio programmers. But my goal as an audio programmer is to keep you on the creative side, on that system side, getting things to work in gameplay, really trying to implement and portray that emotional response you're trying to get from the player as they're navigating this virtual world. If you're caught up too much with how does this file name integrate with the rest of the system, and have I got the right function calls going into whatever system that is when the programmer should be stepping in and saying, let me take that off you so I can enable you to do the creative work that you are hopefully more skilled than I am to implement into the game. So it's a blurry line, but I think the audio programmers there, our customer is the technical sound designer and the sound designer. You are the people that we are trying to please the whole time, and then we're the mediator, the mitigation machine between the artistic sound side and the programmers who are like, why do we even need audio? So we've always got to negotiate that sort of middle ground. So I know that's a bit of a vague answer, but that's how I kind of picture it in my mind, especially when I'm working on a project with others.
Yeah, so where that out of the box, where those out of the box tools fail, that's when you need an audio programmer in general. Or if you find yourself coding a tool because the middleware doesn't provide it, you're now doing audio programming as opposed to technical sound design, is what I would say in general.
That's a great way to put it. I'm also curious then on the other side of the spectrum. So because Jess mentioned at the start, of course, hybrid sound designer, which I love. As a term, I would probably consider myself that to a certain degree. Where would you say that kind of where would you say that technical audio begins in that case, Jess?
Like within my daily work.
So where if you're a traditional sound designer with no technical, where does it start to become hybrid?
So I would say when you get to the extent where you are working in code beyond the middleware, beyond the sound design, I would say once you start adding in a little bit of programming throughout your day, however minor, I feel like that's probably when you really start to get into that technical work. And the really like deep thought type things that Oberon said that you could hit the wall to where you're about ready to call for audio programmer, like, somewhere in that window.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's definitely interesting because I've on a previous project I was collaborating a ton with my technical sound designer, and I guess for me it ended when so I was in Wise and in middleware, and then kind of we both met inside of the middleware, and then he continued more in game engine, and I stayed kind of in the middleware. So he implemented hooks and kind of liaised, I don't know, spoke to the programmers and the engineers essentially for further audio engineering help. And so that was kind of our distinction in that project. But I think as I said before, it depends on the company, it depends on the people, and also on like the size of the project, because in small companies, I think usually the audio programmer, unfortunately, is just one of the programmers who just is being thrown at it rather than someone dedicated who has a love and specific knowledge about it. So yeah, in that case, what does kind of like your day-to-day's tasks look like? Jake, do you want to start with that?
Sure. So like I said, I do a mixture of things. So at the moment, I'm doing a lot of creative sound design, doing a lot of track laying. but I'm also doing all the implementation of those assets, much like what Jess said her workflow is. So in that situation, I'm actually thinking about my implementation while I'm designing, which is for me a much better workflow. I'll give you an example. If we have a lever pull and we want it to do a bunch of clicks, do I do a loop of clicks and just render a loop out, or do I render each individual click and then put it in a looping random container in Wise and introduce pitch randomness and volume randomness to make it more of a real-time system than just a static loop which just plays round and round and doesn't have any interest. So those are the types of things that I'm thinking about when I'm doing my creative sound design, to allow me to make those implementation decisions early.